Good morning. This is the 20th of August, 2015. I'm Carole Wolanow. I'm interviewing Jeff Levine at the JCC for the Roots to Boots project. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for coming with us this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. What I'd like to do is start by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about the history of your grandparents, where they came from prior to the South African experience, a little bit about that history, and then we'll move forward.
So on my father's side, they were from, should have thought about this.
Was it Lithuania?
They were from Lithuania. I'm trying to think of the city. Riga. Riga in Lithuania. And on my mother's side, they were from Antwerp in Belgium. They arrived in South Africa in the early 1900s. My father's family settled in Johannesburg, and my mother's family settled in Cape Town.
And what was their reason for coming to South Africa?
I think it was prior to the war. Well, actually, on my father's side, it was prior to the war, just to move the family. And I think there was opportunity in South Africa. On my mother's side, I think it was part of just leaving Europe and making sure to get the kids out. And she was very young when she arrived.
And what were the professions that the grandparents were involved in at that time?
I don't think I can give you that. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think my father had an interesting upbringing. I can't recall of exactly what his father did, but I think his father left the family at a young age, at his young age, and he started working at a young age, my father, 11 or 12 years old. On my mother's side, her father was, I think, tradesman, a trader, and that's as much as I recall. I know he passed away, I think, in his early 50s.
Tell us about your father's background, what this interesting upbringing that you're talking about.
I think, unfortunately, in his life started real early, having to go out and work and make a living for the family. He was one of 6 kids. He wasn't the youngest. I think he was the third oldest. And he went out to work. And he used to go to school and then used to go work in the afternoons and then work till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
What type of work was he doing?
He was working in a legal office and used to do paperwork and then go home and start his day over. And it was important to bring in money for the family.
Were your grandparents religious?
No. Mostly secular.
Mostly on both sides of the family?
On both sides.
Okay. And at what point and where did your parents meet one another?
They met in Johannesburg. My mother moved to Johannesburg. My father was there. If I recall correctly, I think they were set up on a date. And I suppose the rest is history. I can't tell you exactly the dynamics. My father was much older. He was in his 30s. There's a difference of 10 years between my mother and my father. So almost immediately they started a family, and it was a quick marriage. I mean,
what was your father's profession at that point?
At that point, he was always in sales. In those early days, he was in timber, selling timber and laminate and wood. Actually, I think back then, I really think about it, he was in the glass business. He was working for a company which is today PPG, which is a large glass company, but there were glass companies in South Africa, and that was what he was doing in sales. And then more as he transitioned into woods and veneers and laminates and that kind of sales.
The glass company that he was working for, was it owned by a South African Jew?
Yeah, called Labna, I think. Okay. No, not the Labnas. They were in the furniture business. I'm trying to remember who that
Because we've interviewed somebody recently who owned a glass company. I'm wondering, I can't remember the name of the family, but it's somebody here in Dallas that owned a glass company.
Owned a glass company in Dallas.
I don't know if there's a connection, and I unfortunately can't remember the name.
And I can't recall off the top of my head, but yeah, it was, you know, it was a small, there were, it started as a small glass company, and obviously
Right.
grew and evolved into a much
Right.
bigger, but I think, I can't remember the family's name, but it became a substantive business.
Right. Be interesting.
It's called plate glass.
Yeah.
If that jars your
Well,
memory.
I don't remember, but it might be interesting to try and go back and figure it out and see who that family is, because it may be the family that's here in Dallas.
Or part of the
Or
family.
part of the family, yeah.
Then that's definitely possible.
Yeah, exactly.
That's definitely
So he
possible.
went from glass into timber?
Into veneers, timber,
Mhm.
Laminates,
Mhm.
as we know them today, similar to this.
Uh-huh.
And he spent most of that in that industry for most of his life.
And
Yeah,
was your mother working, or was she taking?
In the
care-
early years, she took care of the kids.
Mhm.
There's 4 of us. I was the youngest, and sort of when I got close to high school, she went out to work. And she mainly worked in the early years with different Jewish organizations, the Jewish Board of Deputies in South Africa. I think she worked for mainly the Jewish Board of Deputies.
Tell me about your schooling. What type of a school did you go to?
Schooling, I went to well, partially we lived in Cape Town, and that's where I started out my schooling, at a public school, or not just public school, but to relate to us here. I started out there, and I went through, you know, the grading's a little different, but let's say to 4th grade, we moved up to Johannesburg, and I went to another public school for a couple of years, and then I was fortunate to go to the local Jewish day school called King David in Linksfield, and went there pretty much in my last year in sort of middle school or elementary school all the way through high school, and that's where I had my education.
Was your family observant in the household? Did you have a kosher home?
We didn't have a kosher home, but we were secular Jews. We had we didn't keep kosher in the house.
And how often were you affiliated with a synagogue?
Yeah, in Cape Town it was the Claremont Synagogue, and in Johannesburg it was Sydenham Highlands North.
Did you or any of your siblings belong to any Zionist youth movement?
Back then, I was, in my younger days, part of Beitar. One of my siblings was also part of Beitar and went to a camp or two, but didn't invest a lot of time in it in the early days.
And what about later in life?
Later in life, no, I haven't dedicated my time to any of those organizations.
So after high school, what did you do?
After high school, I was in a quandary because in South Africa you had to go to the draft, but decided to become an apprentice, an electrical apprentice, became an electrician, and spent 4 years in that program. Yeah, about 3-4 years in a program where you worked for, I think it was 6 months of the year, and the other 6 months you spent in a technical college, and did that and worked part-time and went to school. And then in April of '86, I had to make a concerted decision whether I was going to go to the army in July, because the subscription came up in July and January. and July I was scheduled to go, and I'd finished the course in electrical, and made a decision at that point that instead of staying in South Africa, I was going to move to America. And that's when my life changed to be an American.
Were you married at the time?
I was single.
You were single.
I was single. I was 21 or 22.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there was a lot of thought that went into it.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the thought before coming to America was maybe going to Israel
Mm-hmm.
and doing something there within a educational, just learning something different, going there. Actually, I think I'm going to become a chef in Israel.
But you would have been subject to the draft there as well.
Yeah, but that's a different course
Mm-hmm.
altogether.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa, we had, my brothers had been in the army. They had spent years there. One of them was involved in the war in Angola.
Uh-huh.
And I think being the youngest, the advice was, this is just not what it's cracked up to be.
I see.
So it was a pretty easy decision, and came to America.
Did you come to Dallas immediately?
Came to actually, it's interesting. Before we came to Dallas, I'll give you a little background.
Mhm.
In '84, my brother, who lives here in Dallas still, was in the jewelry business, and said, "Look, I want to go to the States and see if we can sell some of the jewelry we make in South Africa, in America." And so we spent about 2 or 3 weeks here in '84, and I think it was August. And we based ourselves in Dallas because we had appointments in Texas. There were some large jewelry companies in the area, Zales and Gordon's in Houston. And we spent time here traveling around. We went to different cities in the States, and also to get a feel for what potentially would be a landing. But Dallas was the base when we arrived, and it's funny to drive down the streets, even today, just on, it's not Montford.
Preston?
It's just south of 635, the extension of where Montford goes all the way down.
Yeah, Montford goes all the way down.
It was on Montford and 635. There was a little condo. We stayed there. But we decided, after traveling around to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, that Dallas pretty much would be the place we'd come to. And we arrived in '86. He arrived a couple of months before I did, and then I came in April of '86. And that was the beginning of this journey.
So you came to go into business with your brother then?
No, that was sort of maybe the plan, but at that point I was 22 years old, 21, 22, and I decided needed to go work. He was starting out, he was working as well, and to support what we were doing, I went to get a couple of jobs. One of the first jobs was selling artwork door to door, which was a wonderful experience. And then I was very fortunate. I was connected with a business here that South African owned. It's a furniture business. It is called Cantoni. And I started helping them. They were in a transition of moving back into their store because they had a fire. And they were happy to have me helping them and moving furniture. And that really was the beginning and the start of my career with Cantoni that lasted 15 years.
Oh, so you were with them?
Yeah. So I started out there in '86, moving furniture, delivering furniture, running the warehouse, overseeing the warehouse operations, actually working in the warehouse and doing all the work. And then obviously as we grew, I moved up into different positions in sales, and then we opened up a showroom in the World Trade Center called Contempo Designs, ran that for a few years, and then moved to Houston to open up the Cantoni store there, and spent almost 9 years in Houston from '92 to 2001. And at that point decided needed some change, and began a different journey on my own. Opening up a clothing store with my ex-wife in Houston, and we did that. That store ran for about 5 years. I left it after 3, and then did some consulting work. We were living in Houston at the time.
So at what point during all this did you marry?
Married in 93.
And did you marry someone from Houston or from Dallas?
She's from Dallas.
Uh-huh.
She had moved to Houston with a different relationship, and we got set up on a blind date, and decided to go and met her, and figured in my mind the first night that this is potentially somebody I could spend time with. And within a few weeks we were engaged. We were both living in Houston, and we got married in March of '93.
Did you have children?
Yeah, we have 4 kids.
You have 4 kids. How old are your children?
My kids, the oldest is 21. I have an 18-year-old, 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
So we'll get back to the children.
We get back to the children.
Okay. So tell me, so after the clothing business, then what happened?
Clothing business, she stayed in the business. I moved on. Through that transition, I had looked to do some other consulting work with different furniture companies in Los Angeles, spent some time there. Then came back to Dallas in 2007, and basically spent time with the luxury of having family here, stayed with them for a little bit, and started to map out a plan for the future. I always had a vision of being on my own in business, starting my own company, and looked at all the options that I had gained as far as knowledge and education through the years, and started putting a piece together based on my experiences the first few months of being back in Dallas. Decided to create a unique concept at the time. Unique, not that it wasn't something that people were already doing on a publishing level, but like a magazine online. And the impetus, and I suppose this is just trivial, but I suppose it's part of.
Nothing is trivial.
I suppose it's part of the journey. I was staying with my family, and my kids, the family was in Houston, so I commuted every couple of weeks. But I used to walk around the neighborhood in North Dallas and used to count all the contemporary homes and modern homes in development every day. Used to walk 4 miles, and I looked at the amount of homes and thought, well, if there are this many homes in this little corner of a development in Dallas, there's got to be a business for what I wanted to particularly envision, which was creating a website where people who have a modern contemporary home, mid-century modern home, can list their home on my website if it's for sale. And there were some interesting developments that had popped up early in those years, in '07, which were significant communities, only allowed homeowners to build modern homes. And I looked at that and I said, well, if there's an opportunity for people to be that specific and dedicate land and make the homeowners only build homes that are modern, there's something brewing in Dallas. And obviously my background with Cantoni was contemporary furniture, modern contemporary furniture, and early years, I think it was 88, 89, just to go back a little bit, my brother and myself had purchased land in North Dallas, and we actually built a house, which was a soft contemporary home. So we had the desire to be in the building business of homes, but it was a first test run, and eventually we lived in it, and sold it a little later on.
What is your brother's name?
Ian Levine.
Ian.
Familiar with Ian?
No, but I need to become familiar with him. He probably needs to be interviewed if we haven't already interviewed him.
I have no idea.
I'll have to check.
So we built the home. It didn't plan out exactly the way we wanted it to plan out, and we went on a different journey. He's in the jewelry business, and I was in the furniture business. And going back to 2007, or going forward to 2007, my experience is pretty varied. I'd spent time in the furniture business. Part of the furniture business, even though it was just furniture, was partly design. And I was involved in design projects for clients in Houston, whether it was a home, an office. So I spent some time in the design side, spent some time developing the business, which fortunately was pretty successful and still is very successful.
So you have an online site at this point?
So yeah, so coming back to where I am at 2007, I started moderndallas.net. Moderndallas.net is still alive and kicking today in 2015. We've obviously evolved and grown. We do a lot of different things. We have a print publication that we mail out to modern homes, contemporary homes, and we recently started a little TV show called Modern Dallas TV, where we go out every week and we source out homes that are for sale. We interview an art gallery owner or artist who's having a current show, and then we go and look for cool spaces around town that really are they just have a feel and great vibe about this modern lifestyle that people can go if it's a coffee shop or a restaurant, or just a unique space that we feel fits our niche. And then one of the other things is we will focus on modern sacred spaces. There's some great religious institutions, whether it's Jewish, non-Jewish, Christian, Episcopal, whatever, they have great modern sanctuaries.
Have you ever gone to what the gallery called the Mod Gallery? I think it's called the Mod Gallery.
Mod Artist Gallery?
Yeah.
I own the Mod Artist Gallery as well. So,
you own it?
Yeah, I have Mod Gallery, Mod Artist Gallery, if that's the same gallery.
Yeah.
That's my gallery as well.
That's what I thought. I thought there was a connection.
That's interesting. How do you know about it?
Because I'm a member of the Texas Jewish Artists Association, and we had a meeting in your
That's
place.
right. We had a meeting recently there.
Yes.
I was on the panel talking about
I
art.
wasn't at that meeting, but I was at a prior meeting, and I remember talking to you about, we have to talk again. Yes, now because when you started talking about this modern business, I thought, there's something here that's clicking, and I was trying to remember, and now I remember the gallery. Yes. Okay, well, we'll talk offline about the gallery.
So through the 8 years, we've grown the business. We have the similar concepts. Modern Dallas, we have modaustin.net, modernhouston.net, modernatlanta.net, and modernnyc.com, modern New York. And we update these websites every week. But through the journey, and obviously you asked me the question which I would have come to, but we're going to how we got into the art business. Early on, I've always had somewhat of a passion for arts.
Right.
The art business is very different to the retail business. And through my connections of Modern Dallas,
Right.
I started connecting with different artists.
Right.
And in '09, I had a gallery for a short minute. Wasn't the ideal time to open a gallery in Dallas in
Right.
2009, but there were circumstances that I thought made sense, and we opened it, and I had one or two really great artists working with me, and we had shows for a year, and unfortunately just the timing was terrible, and after 1 year it just didn't make sense to continue. So Modern Dallas continued through the years, and with this cultivating of artists, an artist came to me and said, I'd love to advertise on your website, but the rates are too high. And one day I popped up and I said, I think we've got a good medium to promote artists, and market artists,
Exactly.
not represent artists, but just to promote them on a regular basis. And we came up with the Mod Artists Gallery
Right,
concept, where
right.
once a month we send out an email to our database in all the cities and promoting artists. And we found a way to work together.
Right.
And that's been going on since 2011. We had an annual show every year at a local
Right.
gallery here called
Right.
Levine Gallery. And then last year, after our annual show, one of our artists came up and said, why don't we ever get together? This is a great group. We should talk. We should spend time. I didn't realize who was part of this group. We had an art talk that last year at the gallery, and Gail Saxon,
Yes.
you may know, was our moderator.
Yes, of course.
And it was a great event, and it just brought the group together. And I said, all right, let's have a meeting. And the vision was maybe not to have a gallery, but to go to art fairs
Uh-huh.
with a group. And just so happened that one of the mod artists is a photographer, and he has a studio, and he was leasing out the front portion of the studio
Uh-huh.
because there was no need for him to use it.
Right.
His business has evolved and changed.
Mhm.
And we found a way and said, through this meeting that we were having about art fairs,
Mhm.
and I said, what about, just throw it out, about a gallery, and all of a sudden there was this aha moment
Uh-huh.
between us and said, well, I have the space, let's find a way to make this
Exactly.
work. And we figured out a deal that worked for him and worked for me and for the artists. And
Right.
ultimately, a year ago, September, we opened Mod Artists Gallery. And,
It's a beautiful space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in love with it. I know
Fantastic.
several of the artists.
Right. It's we've been very fortunate. We've cultivated a great group.
Mhm.
I think 34 artists now,
Mhm.
covering, just different mediums from, sculpture, ceramic, acrylic on canvas, oils, just a great variety, wood pieces, crafted furniture. So that's Mod Artist Gallery, and Mod Media is a separate entity and
Mhm.
separate business, and that's sort of where we are today.
Awesome. Just awesome. So you're very busy.
I am busy. I obviously, and there are other things in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Next week we start a radio show called The Modernist.
My goodness.
So yeah, it's crazy at the moment. I don't know, there's not enough time in the day, but it's what it is, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun and stressful, but you do what you enjoy, and time just fits in.
And so at this point, do you have any involvement with anything in the Jewish community?
Not really. I'm, I suppose, at some level, it's not a strength.
Mhm.
I do support other charities.
Mhm.
I'm involved with just going back, so about 5 years ago, 2010, I created a event,
Mhm.
a fine art event for 12 Dallas Jewish artists
Mhm.
at the in-town Chabad on Root Street.
Oh, did you?
And it was a one-day event. It was crazy, put a lot of time, effort, and we actually got a very good response. And at the time it was, wow, that was pretty interesting. What else could we do?
Mhm.
So we came up, I worked with Dahlia Woods,
Mhm.
who had a gallery in Deep Ellum, and is actually a part of Mod Artist Gallery
Right.
today. And Dahlia and I put together a show which is called the 8x8.
Well, that's what we're doing at the Biblical Arts.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my show. That's-
Oh, you're doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, because I just delivered a piece there
So,
yesterday.
yeah, fantastic. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. So the story was, the first year we did it at her gallery. We
Uh-huh.
had about 30 Jewish artists, and we
Yeah.
included artists from the day schools at
Uh-huh.
Yavner and Akiba and Levine Academy.
Uh-huh.
I think everyone was involved. We picked our pieces,
Yeah.
and we partnered with, the charity we partnered with, Jewish Family Services.
Uh-huh.
the
So
first year.
so this year, everything, the money's all going to biblical
I'll
art?
come to that right now,
Okay,
yeah.
no, I'm
Because there is a story.
Okay, yeah.
And the second year, Dahlia, at that point, I think, was leaving town to move to Florida.
Mhm.
And we decided we needed to find a new gallery and a new charity. Jewish Family Services didn't seem that interested at the time,
Mhm.
and we didn't really, I don't think we pursued it, we just let it ride, and then all of a sudden it was upon us, November 2011, I think it was.
Mhm.
And we had found a gallery, it was called Rising Gallery downtown, and we didn't have a charity. And I was very specific in my mind that I wanted a charity that had somewhat of a religious affiliation to
Uh-huh.
whatever. I couldn't
Right.
figure it out, and I was struggling, and they're great charities. I mean, there's plenty
Right,
of charities
right.
around Dallas, but what I was looking for just wasn't hitting me, the big ones, the little ones. And all of a sudden, on a Saturday afternoon, I got an email from a gallery that had a show for an artist.
Mhm.
I remember the gallery, I don't remember the artist. But more importantly, the artist was donating work to a charity or a museum called the Biblical Museum. Biblical Museum.
You
This
had
is an
to-
interesting concept.
Right, right. And you
I never
thought-
heard of them.
Right, and they're right here in our own
And they're right
area.
here. So
Yeah.
I did a little research,
Mhm.
and I thought, wow, how did I not know that that place existed
Right,
in the backyard?
exactly, exactly.
So I reached out to them. I remembered, I think it was a Tuesday. Monday they were closed. Tuesday I called. And it was November the 3rd or the 4th, and our show was on the 20th or the 12th. There was no time for
Right.
it. But I knew at that point it almost had what I wanted.
Right.
Because I'd done enough research in that short hour or two to say, I'm going to make this work. So I called them up, and I'm telling them all my story and what I'm trying to accomplish. And she says, well, you've got to talk to the director, and he's got to decide. And so I said, look, I've got to make some decisions. And I said, let's just get it. She said, make an appointment, and we'll get you in, and you can talk. And I met Scott Peck.
Yes, Scott's fabulous.
And that
I
was the
love
next
him,
day, and I
yes.
gave him my spiel, and I
Yeah.
think Scott was like, who is this crazy guy?
Oh, Scott's amazing. I love him.
But,
Yeah.
so we brought the show to, at Rising, they were the beneficiary. And then the following year, we decided that we were going to take the show and have it at the museum.
Right, exactly.
And basically, that was the beginning of that relationship with the Museum of Biblical Arts, that we have our annual 8x8 show. And basically, it was a gift to the museum from me.
Absolutely.
And the first year we had a very good, I mean, every year's been a success. I think we've almost sold out every
Great.
year.
Well, I'm so excited about it because I just got invited this year to participate.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to hear
Yeah.
that. This is great.
Yeah.
This year I'm chairing.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm chairing with another gallery owner in town, Bob from Southwest Gallery, Malafont
Oh,
from Southwest Gallery. So the two of us will be
Fantastic.
chairing it, and it's a wonderful. It's a wonderful museum on so many levels, and so when it comes to charity, I have different affiliations.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's important.
Mhm.
A lot of art comes from our background, religious backgrounds,
Mhm.
whatever they may be. And so, yeah, I may not participate totally in all the Jewish organizations, but I think there's different ones that I find that gravitate to what I do.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
this is the one other one I'm very fond of. It's Dwell with Dignity.
Tell
If
me
you've
about that.
Dwell
I'm
with
not
Dignity,
sure. Yeah.
quick synopsis is, it's a group of designers who came up with a plan that they would furnish homes
Mhm.
for people who were starting out again.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of their potential opportunities come through churches or organizations that are helping people reboot their lives through whatever circumstances that they're involved in. And it's more driven through interior design, and I like the feel of that. It feels good, and where we can, we do deliver whatever we can to help them. So that's Dwell with Dignity. The Museum of Biblical Arts is another one. And then on a side note, something else that I do through the day, and that's coming to culminating to a finish right now. There's a street on Henderson Avenue called there's a street in Dallas called Henderson
Right.
Avenue, and Henderson Avenue has a program which was started by the Andrus family.
Yes.
Art on Henderson was the original name.
Yes.
It's now Henderson Art Project was the original name. It's now Art on Henderson, and I oversee the program.
Oh, wonderful.
So
Ruth is really a great person. I love her.
yeah, and you know, up until I think 2 years ago, they were one of the, well, if not the landlord for Henderson Avenue, and then they recently sold it. But they started this program with another artist, Scott Trent, who's a sculptor, and where they created an environment on the street from 75 to Ross, where they would basically bring together developers and artists, well, business people, developers and artists, and beautify the street.
Really? I'll have to look at
Go
it.
drive down the street. There's 14 sculptures. There's a beautiful wild yellow piece when you turn onto Henderson from the feeder road of 75. And you keep going down, and there's just beautiful metal pieces.
Oh, I
and,
can't wait to go look.
So this year we're wrapping it up. We're waiting for the judges to give us the final results. It's a juried competition. We accept application or submissions from all around Texas. We have a group of 4 judges.
Are you going to have a party of some sort?
Yep, we're planning on a party, hopefully for September. It's a little hot now.
How are
Well,
you
not
gonna
today,
have,
but...
How are you going to have it publicized?
We have the company that actually oversees, or who owns a large portion of the property on Henderson, has their own PR company, and with them we'll, and obviously through the restaurants and the whole program. This will actually be the first year since almost the beginning that we'll have an event. And so that's Art on Henderson. It's also a wonderful city project, even though it's not
sounds terrific.
driven by the city.
Well, you're
but,
very active. Very.
I sort of am active.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that's marvelous.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You're doing some great things.
Hopefully.
Is there anything you miss about South Africa?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, you know what? I think I haven't been back in 29 years.
Really?
Yeah. I just the way my life has been, and being in retail and kids and all that, and times of their change there and evolution, and most of our families all here. Well, everyone's here of the immediate family in the States. It was never really a reason to go back and visit, but as you get older and you think about things, I think the one thing that always pops out is the last city that I visited before leaving Johannesburg was Cape Town. It's a beautiful city, it's beautiful beaches, it's a magnificent place. I look at the pictures on Facebook and I think to myself, that's maybe one thing that I would really yearn to go back. And we will go back at some point, it's just timing.
So now tell me about your children.
Tell you about my children. Well, I have 4 kids. The oldest is 21. He's currently studying at Ole Miss.
And what is his name?
His name's Cameron. Cameron's studying finance and management at Ole Miss. My 18-year-old's going to college tomorrow, taking him to Texas A&M in Corpus Christi.
And his name is?
His name's Carole. He's 18, and his vision for what he would like to accomplish is he'd like to be in broadcast journalism. And then I have a 15-year-old daughter, Keely, and she's at Highland Park High School. Starting next week, she goes into her, I think it's freshman year. And then I have a 6th grader, Cody, and he's at Highland Park Middle School, or McCullough Independent School. So those are the 4 kids. What more can I tell you? They're great kids, they're wonderful kids, and hopefully they do what they need to do.
If you had to give them some words of wisdom in terms of what you...
I tell them every day.
Well, no, specifically in terms of what you've learned from your parents, what you've learned from Judaism, what you've learned just from sense of value and ethics, what would you leave them as a legacy?
I think, obviously there's the important things of being, honest, have integrity, work hard, follow your dreams. More importantly, stay consistent. If you're going to do something, focus, show up. 90% of whatever you do is getting there and doing a great job. I think more importantly, and I do tell my kids all the time, create something for yourself. Don't rely on other people where you can. Find a way to make your own living. It's the greatest reward, and it can be immensely stressful and immensely painful. But I think there's a magic in life that when you find your own career or own opportunity, gifts of life come to you that you can't imagine. So I think that's really what I try and tell them that all the time. And it's not for everybody, being in your own and dealing with stress and aggravation and all that, because it doesn't come easy. Running your own company, running your own business is never easy. But I think if you can find that magic, it's a wonderful life. That's it.
Thank you. You've been a pleasure to speak with today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your taking your time.
My pleasure. I don't normally talk about myself.
Well, but that's what it's all about, because we wanted you to share your life not only just with us, but to have a legacy for your children. And I think it's important. What
Absolutely.
you've done today is important for the community, but also for your family.
No, it's
Thank
a pleasure.
you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.